So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to bite 6 of our crime game using Python. What we're going to learn this time is going to be how to do loops in Python, how to copy and format columns in pandas. We're going to loop and append tables in pandas. And then we're going to catch errors in Python, okay? For those of you that are members of the channel, you already have the notebook available on Google Drive. Go and get it there. Otherwise, you will see it, now when you're watching this. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. This is our how the program goes so far. Do you want to accept the challenge? Yes. What is your name? Ruth. Presenting this we did on bite 5. We presented a list of all the tables. We have done this already. This part, we're going to loop it instead of creating manually as we did. We are going to validate the user input. So if you write something else that is not a number between 0 and 1, it will ask again. It'll tell you, hey, that's wrong. Please try again. And so once you write a number, if you write 0, it will create a list with all the tables and all the information for all the tables. You see there, cool. But it will say, okay, do you need more help? Yes. You can ask for a table at a time. You see there, right? So do you need more help? Yes. Until it gets tired and say, no, I'm good. Let's do something else. And then the program stops because we haven't created anything else, but we will do on the next bites. Let's get started. Okay, I'm now moving away from Google Colab because, this database thing is going to be a pain. So make sure that you've already installed. I have Anaconda. So when you have Anaconda installed, just, go install it. And then when you go in here, you go to Jupyter Lab. I prefer Jupyter Lab. And then click on launch and it will launch in your browser. That's all. And then here, if you do Control B, here are all the bytes that we have. Okay, so you can work with them. Store the database somewhere in your computer. I'll show you how you can, if you store the database where your files, notebooks are, then you don't need to put the entire path to them. But I don't like to have them there. I prefer to move them. So I move things around. So I have the entire path. I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing that we're going to do is learn how to loop this. We created this manually, but instead of doing that, we're going to loop through it. It's a perfect example for learning how to loop. So let's see. The first thing that we're going to do is, as you can see, we have a list of 1 to 8. In reality, we have 0 to 8, but let's start with 1 to 8. List. So we're going to create a variable called n. You can call it anything that you like. And then we're going to use range 9. Here's the thing. Python, like a lot of programming languages, if not all, starts with 0, not 1. So if you want to have 8, you have to put to 9. Okay. So now if I press enter and I do list n and shift enter, it will give you a list of 0 to 8. Again, because it starts in 0, you need to put 9 in. Yeah, you catch me, right? Okay, so we do not want to have 0. We will want to have 0, but not now. So we want to have just 1 to 8. So in that case, we're going to do another variable, range. In range, you're going to specify the start and the end of the parameters. So you can say starting 1, finishing 8, which is 9. List n2. And then we have 1 to 8. Okay. So now we have a variable that lists numbers from 1 to 8. So we have this part. So what we're going to do now is we're going to loop through that. Instead of doing list, we're going to actually loop it. So how to loop? You go here and you do for, and then here is the name of the variable that is going to be fed into the loop. So you can call it anything that you like. Let's call it number. So for each number in where n, which is this, the range of 0, well, maybe we should do n2. n2 because it's 1 to 8, right? And then you can go here and print. So you can see, do you remember that I told you, I think it was like on Tuesday, that Python allows you to see intermediate tables by printing them. This is what I mean. So you'll see. So I can actually print number and I can print N2, so I know what is being fed to the loop. Watch this. So it's telling me that it's printing through this list, and then number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 is the range, this range that we have here. How cool is that? So we just need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't need that. So we are going to do type. So if we write type and then plus, and then get rid of this part, we don't need it, and shift enter. And it says can only concatenate a string. Yeah, exactly. So because we are concatenating, this is by default a number. So we need to convert this into a string. So we can concatenate, the same in Power BI. And then we need to put we need to put a space in there. And then we have type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. Okay. Now we need to do for the crime and then list the different table names. So for that, we need to connect to a database again, right? That's where we have the list of tables. So let's go back and connect to our database. Going to copy the code. This is from byte 5. So if you don't know what this is, go to byte 5 and I explain everything in detail. We're going to print the table so you can see what this generates. And as you can see, this goes to our database, and this is how you connect. You have to put the R in the beginning, right there, which is, I think it stands for raw. And then this is the full path to where my file is. And then you can read the contents of the database, and this is how you do with that, okay? So now we have a list of the tables here, but we don't want the list in that way. And if you remember on byte 5, let me see, I think I have it here. On byte 5, we did some changes to our list, so it will, be uppercase and it will be space in between, so we will beautify this. You have to be very careful because we cannot feed our, well, in this case, we can actually do that. So let's copy the entire thing. Go back to byte 6. Again, this was explained on byte 5. Check it out there. So we are going to, this generates a list. This variable here contains this list with the table names, which is exactly what we wanted, right? So now we can put the loop together. So we're going to go here, loop over the tables and append. Yes, sir. So the range is 1 to 9. We have that already, right? And then the table that we're going to feed is this one. So here's one super cool thing about looping in Python. So if you remember, we had these for, let's copy it, for n in n2, well, now it's called, maybe we should call it n3, so we are not confusing the variables that are stored in memory. So n3, then go and print that. Now we need to add for the, and then table, right? So we need to add this part. So we go in there, plus space for the, and then this is table name, plus table. We still haven't fed the table name, so yeah, exactly. So now we need to put in here the table name. How do we do that? When you're looping two lists at the same time, and you want to be looped in the order they appear. So we want 1 with crime scene, 2 with driver's license, 3 with Facebook. Yeah. So you do have here number, and then you do table, any variable name you want to give it. I'm going to call it table. You can call it anything that you like. And then to loop these two things together, you use something called zip. Wonderful. So neat. So zip will go with the two lists, and we get the first one from list 1, the first one from list 2, and loop them. First one from the second one from loop 1, the second one, you get the point, right? So here we're going to feed this list, the one that we have there. And you want to see it. So you can actually do an intermediate print where you can print the contents of it. And here we're going to do plus table plus shift enter. And as you can see, you can actually see what's going on in the loop. So this is printing the thing that is being fed to these two variables is one and crime scene report. And then it goes and prints it. Type 1 for the crime scene report table. How wonderful is that? This should not be a comma. So now we will get rid of that and do enter. Look, type 1 for the crime scene report table, type 2 for the driver's seat. And we didn't need to do it manually. Just this little piece of code, it gives everything we needed. Now, if you remember from our game, we're going to have also 0. And what does it say? It says type 0 for all tables. So we need to, in here, add that, print type 0 for all tables, okay? Outside the loop, obviously, because otherwise it's going to loop it every time, and we don't want that. So let me do it again, like that. So type 0 for all tables and blah, 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 blah. So now you know how to loop this. Sure is easy, right? And so useful. This little code instead of all that bunch. And the thing is that if we were adding new tables, they would get added here, right? So it is dynamic instead of us having to hard code stuff. We're going to add in tables. We might add them to a new database. We'll see how we do, but we are going to add tables, and maybe in this database for a new one, we'll see what makes more sense. Okay, now, so how do we create? We have the first loop, and now we need to create this huge table. And again, we want the tables to be created dynamically, right? So if you remember how to, from byte 5, this is how we created tables. Let's run it, not this one. So table name data frame. So this is the code that queried the database for the table, and this is the variable that fed in here. So this says, give me the table information for crime scene report, right? So now, instead of hard coding these, we want to fit them the same way as here. But, this is a big but, and I completely lost my mind doing this, because you cannot use this one. This contains the beautified version of your crime scene report, right? It won't work. What we need to have is the original version. So we need to split this into two variables. We need to have one that does the beautified version, and then we need to have one that is unbeautified, so we can use both as needed. So what we're going to do here is we go up here again, and we're going to modify this slightly. So let me comment out, because this we will use. Rerun these, and we get again our original table, right? The one that comes when we created the database originally. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a copy of this in a new column. And to do that, you just give it a new name. So you put the data frame name, and then you give a new name, which is, I call it proper name. You can call it something else. And then this is equal to df table name. So basically you are saying, well, you can, I think you can call it exactly like that. So this is copy this column as a new column called proper name. And if I do def table, you're going to see that it creates a copy. Gorgeous. Okay. Now, this proper name, we want it to have beautified. So we want to do this to that. So in here, we're going to copy that. And this column is now called proper name, not name, proper name. And here I have to do proper name. And I'm going to call this variable proper. I think df proper, I think I call it df proper. And this is proper name. I'm going to show you what this does in just a second. Proper. So if we run df proper, it gives us a list of beautified names that we need to feed in here. So now we're not going to feed df tbl, we're going to feed df proper. Enter, and we get this exact same thing, right? So gorgeous. For here, we need a new variable that I'm going to call df name, and that is going to be just the contents of df tbl name. And just so you can see them, df name, you see, is the unbeautified version of the table names. And this is the one that we need to feed down here for our for loop. Okay, so let's do this in parts. So we're going to do for, let's see what I call it, for table name in df, do you remember? Name, df, what did we call it? Df name. Sure, we call it df name, right? Df name, yes. In df name, and then we're going to go here and call it, I call this result, this variable, result. You have to indent it. And then we're going to print result so we can see it. Right. And then it gives us all the tables at once. Beautiful. But this is not really what we want. There are two problems with this. The first one is that, as you can see, we don't really see what table it belongs to because we haven't added the table name. We're going to do that. And the other one, we don't want to have the header in there. So we just want to append them. So to add a table name to this table, we're going to do like this. Result, add a new column that is going to be called table name. And that is equal to table name. So this one here. I'm running. Do you see that now it added a new column and it's giving us for each table the table name? It's gorgeous. Exactly what we wanted. Beautiful. Now, the next thing that we need to do is to append those tables. So for that, we're going to first create an empty list, and then we're going to instruct it to add, for each loop, add the results into that list. So first we create an empty list. So it's going to be called result list, and it's going to be empty in the beginning. We need to have something to append it to. If you don't do this, there's nothing to append, and it will give you an error. It's going to tell you. And then we do result list dot append. And what are we going to append? The contents of result up there. Okay? And print it. And then we're going to final result, concatenate everything. Final result is equal to pd concat. This is a pandas function. How do I know? I Google it. It is what it is. Result list and we're going to, we don't need to Do I need to print that? Don't know. Schema print final result. And then if we do to markdown, it beautifies a little bit. I cannot use this with trinket, so you will not see it beautify there, but there you have the list. Okay, so this is the list created. So what this does is concatenate the appended lists in here, get rid of the header, and then this one just beautify it. So if you remove the to markdown part, you see it creates like a half ugly list. Well, this is not like super beauty, but it's a lot more readable because, you know, it is properly formatted. And yeah, so yeah, we've done quite a lot of progress. Okay, so now you're almost ready to put the code that I gave you, you know, that you can see here on byte 6. There is one thing more that you need to know. And we're going to do user validation, but in this case, you're going to, one of the validations is going to generate an error and you need to account for it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You probably can Google it, but just for the sake of completion, let me Google. Also, let me show you how it is. So if we go up here in this part, so put it there, and it says print all tables. We're going to add some text. If you remember the code, it says, what would you like to see, right? Which table would you like to see? And then ask for it. So here we should ask for the user input, right? So in this case, it's just empty, right? Because the question we are asking it here. Let me show you what this looks like. So it says, what would you like to see? We should probably put for readability. Input. Thank you. Okay, there you go. So, Shift Enter, and then it says, what would you like to see? And then we need to validate this input. So if the user says 0, 1, 2, it should give a table, but if it returns an R, it should ask again, or if it returns a number that is bigger, like 12, so anything else that is not between 0 and 8, these things should ask the question again. So we need to loop over it. You know how to loop now, so we do while true, and then we need to indent these ones. And now we need to say, okay, if, maybe one more, if inspect table not in n, but n is here 1 to 9. We need to have the 0 too, because the 0 is also allowed. So n you should change to range 9. That would be enough in this case, because it would do it from 0 to 8, including the 0. So this should do if it's not 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What should it do? Then it should go and say print. Let me copy it, otherwise we will be here forever. So sorry, try it again, and then it should go up and continue, ask again the question. And otherwise, else, just break the thing. So otherwise, break the loop and continue to whatever code you have afterwards, right? So we're going to test it. Else should have. So if I write 3, it says, sorry, wrong answer, which is not true. So what's happening? It just confused me a lot. And the thing is that this is a number and this is text. So we need, for this piece of code to work, we need to make this a number. So if I do int, stop the code and run it again. And if I now do 3, it works. If I now do works, I mean, it doesn't break or do anything weird. If I do 12, it says, sorry, wrong answer, only numbers from 1 to 11. Perfect. But what happens now if I do a number, R? It says, well, that's not a number. And it's not. It's definitely not a number. So we have an issue here. You have to have this as a number, but if a user does not put an answer, then you get an error. So how do you capture errors in Python? You do it the same way as you do it with Power Query, actually. So you use try. In Power Query, it's called try otherwise. Here is try except. So try these, otherwise, right? So we need to add that piece of code. So we're going to write here try, and then we need to indent the code. And then we need to say, okay, what happens if it is, in our case, text, not otherwise, sorry, except. Power Query in the brain. Okay, so if it is text, they need to do the exact same thing. You need to print, sorry, and then continue. So keep on asking, continue. And now we're going to give this a whirl. If I have a 3, it stops, which is it doesn't stop. I mean, it's just there's no more code to run. You know, when you build the entire game, it will continue running. So if I go and put 12, it says no good. If I put a letter, right, until I put a valid. So, okay, so now you have everything that you need to run your code. So what you need to do is to put everything together so you can run this. Okay, so come here, test what I've done, and I validate both the yes or no, and just as a reminder, Ruth, and then this is validation, what we just did. So you can write whatever you want, and then you won't stop until you give them the correct answer, which is 3. And then I validate these two. So if I write a number, it says or if I write, right? So until you just say yes or no. Okay, so that's your job. I hope you're enjoying these bites. Let me know if it goes too fast, too slow, if you're enjoying it, if you hate it. Give me feedback. So I will see you again on bite 6. And I think, no, 7. I think for bite 7, we're probably going to do a little bit of data visualization, because we've introduced the player to the data, and now we want to tell them about the case. So we will build a map, and we will give them some stats about the case, and yeah, things like that. So looking forward to bite 7.